Welcome back. So recently I published a video on in-app purchases and it got quite a lot of good feedback. However, many of you wanted me to extend that video to talk a bit more on the next steps that are necessary and how to deal with subscription-based purchases. Now, before we get started, let's sum up where we were at the end of the previous tutorial. So the last thing I showed you was how you can add these in-app purchases using App Store Connect. And I also showed you how you can create your own Sandbox tester accounts. And lastly, to get the most out of it, I recommended you to run it on a real device. And before you run it on a real device, it's important that you go to your scheme editor and under run, you make sure that the StoreKit configuration is reset back to none. Remember previously we were using this configuration.storekit file. So once you're done with that, make sure you run it on a real device, not a simulator. And once you have it running on your real device, make sure you go to settings and then you will find a section called App Store, and then you go all the way down to where it says Sandbox account. And here you have to simply select it, and most likely you haven't signed into it, but if you want to sign in with a different account, make sure you sign out to it and sign in with your new account. And then you should see that the new customer at beyond.com was used here. So once you're in the app and you decide to make this purchase, all you have to do is select it. And once you select this row, you should get this pop-up which says Sandbox here at the top. And you will also see that this is only for testing purposes. You also see the new account and you can simply press purchase and continue. You have to enter the password. Here again, you see that this is really the Sandbox environment. And once that is done, you will see that you will get this alert that you're all set and that your purchase was successful. And you should see that this row or this item got unlocked. So I could just select here and see the secret recipe. However, there's one issue with this app. As many of you noticed, when we close this app and open it again, we will see that the item is locked again. If you wanted to unlock it, the only way was to press this restore button. And what happens when you press this restore button is it actually connects to the App Store and tries to load all the purchases. So what happens here is, so here I am in the store Swift file, and what happens is this payment queue method is called again when you restore, and we get into the switch statement where we go into restored, and we actually append this new product identifier into our completed purchases. Remember, we're not storing this, so it will be removed whenever we restart. That's why every time you have to restore it to see it. In practice, what you would usually do is you would have a separate server that can validate a purchase by so-called receipt. However, for some simple apps where you do not really care about the side effects, especially if you have something like non-consumable items like unlocking something forever, where you do not really have to keep track of the dates and you do not really care about whether someone with a jailbroken phone can access it, you can go with the simple solution such as storing it in UserDefaults. However, for subscriptions, especially the renewable subscription, I would strongly recommend you to set up your own server. And now let me show you how it works with UserDefaults. Now here we are back in the store.swift file, and we're in this payment queue method, updated transactions. So inside of here we have this for each transaction in transactions loop, and once this is done, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the completed purchases array is not empty. Remember, the completed purchases contains strings of the identifiers, and if it is not empty, we want to save it in our user default. So all I did was I added these 3 lines here, and also went up here and created a new function called load stored purchases. And in here I basically checked if I'm able to get the user defaults for a specific key, and I'm trying to cast it as an array of strings, so the identifiers array. And then I want to set it to the completed purchases when it really exists. Now, one thing we can do here is remember this key is used twice, and whenever you do something like this, it's a good idea to store it in a private constant. So what you can do is something like follows. You could say private let user defaults key and then make it equal to the string. And then you can simply pass this in here. And also down here. And this will make sure that we do not have typos. So there's only one location where this is contributed from. Now, once we did that, we have to obviously also call this load stored purchases. And where we do that is in our content view. Now, what I did was inside of this navigation view where we have a list, we have this group where we basically check whether the recipe is logged or not and provide only the navigation to the secret recipe if the recipe is not logged. And what I want to do is at the end of this group, I want to also add this on appear where I simply call the load stored purchases. Now, if we do this and run our app, now if we do this, you will notice that after the first purchase, when you close the app and open it again, it will still stay unlocked. Now, lastly, I want to show you how to create subscriptions. And the way you do that is you go into App Store Connect and then you go to apps and then you choose your app. And once you chose it, make sure you go to the in-app purchases on the left sidebar. And down here, you should see the manage button. And then you should be able to see the in-app purchases. And as you can see, I already added this auto renewable subscription. Did it similarly to the non-consumable purchase. I pressed this plus item. I chose auto renewable subscription and then I press create. And here I have to provide a reference name. I will simply call this one full access 2 because I already have one. And for the product ID, you can simply use the bundle ID. And then you press next. Now, once you press next, it will ask you whether you want to add it to the subscription group. Now, what is a subscription group? Well, each subscription must be part of a subscription group. And the idea of a subscription group is that basically it means that your users can only buy one subscription within a group at a time. Now, this is very useful if you want to prevent your users from accidentally purchasing multiple subscriptions that grant access to the same content. So all you need to do to prevent this case is to use a single subscription group for all relevant subscription products. However, if you want to offer multiple subscriptions and with each you want to grant your users access to different kind of features, then you should consider using multiple subscription groups. But we are fine with just one. So go ahead and choose create new subscription and give it a name. Now this one is the one I already created. I know it's not very creative, but let me create another one and then press create. And then you get to this screen that you see here. Now what you want to do is you want to choose the duration. And here you can choose between different kinds of durations. So let's say we want to have a monthly subscription thing. So I will just press 1 month and then scroll down and then press plus for subscription prices. Make sure to save before you get to that point. And then press plus again. Now here you can choose the currency and the price that is paid each month. So let's simply say $1.99, for example, and then press next. Now you get the option to adjust these prices for different kind of countries. So you could say, for example, Argentina doesn't have to pay that much, it just pays a bit less. And you can adjust it as much you want. And then you press create and then you can press OK. Now go back to your in-app purchase by pressing this full access 2. And make sure you to save as always. And then down here you also want to provide App Store information. You want to provide the localizations because remember, these purchases get their localization strings from here. So we want to make sure that these are provided. So I will simply create one here as follows. And then I will simply call this one full access to gives full access to all recipes. Now this is really all you have to do. Make sure you save it. Now back in Xcode, you want to go back to your all products identifiers, and you want to make sure that you provide this new identifier. As you can see, I'm using the previous one that I created, so it doesn't have the 2 behind it. Now what I also did here was I went into my assets and I provided an image. Remember, I named them after the identifier, and I basically provided this crown. Now go ahead and run it on a real device, and let me show you how it looks like there. So here I'm running it on a real device, and here, as you can see, both of them are locked. And now if I tap on the monthly subscription row, I should be able to see this pop up again. And here you can also see that the price says it starts from December 23rd, which is today, and it is a monthly subscription, and you're paying 99 cents a month. And when you press subscribe, you will be asked for a password, and if you provide it, you should also see that the monthly subscription got unlocked. And when you tap on it, you should see the secret recipe. However, as I mentioned earlier, this is not the solution you want to use long term. You don't want to store it in the user defaults. It is fine for the first item because it's non-consumable. However, this should expire in a month, and you don't want to have it unlocked forever. Now, as I showed you earlier, what we're doing here is we're getting down here to purchased, and then we're adding it to the completed purchases. So in this case, the subscription. And then all we did was we stored it into the user defaults, and whenever the app reloads, we're simply loading the purchases. So this is always unlocked at this point. Now I won't go into the programming of this with a server-side perspective because that would go too much into depth. I might cover it in a separate video if you're really interested in it, but for now I will give you this reference to this conference, Engineering Subscriptions, and they really explain it quite well on how you can set up your own server to basically verify transactions. And as I told you earlier, the best way to store these things is not on device, but somewhere else. Now, I strongly recommend you this resource once you get into subscriptions, because it will clarify a lot of things, and I don't think I could explain it much better than it was explained in this video. Now, this is all I wanted to show you in this video. I hope I could answer a few of your questions. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.